Between 1941 and 1945, the U.S. mobilized its economy in a unique way. Industrial production doubled and the government rationed basic goods. Domestic savings reached a record 26% in 1944, compared to the current 3 to 5%. Millions of families reduced consumption and eliminated waste, turning frugality into a civic virtue. These tricks for stretching every dollar and resource are not historical curiosities, but practical and necessary tools for modern families facing economic uncertainty. Here are 10 lessons from the war era applicable today. Leave a like, subscribe, and share. Let's get started. Trick number 1. The Victory Garden Food Production System. In 1944, 20 million Victory Gardens produced 40% of the vegetables consumed in the U.S. Patios, roofs, and parks were converted into production centers to free up the commercial supply chain. Today, the economic logic remains valid. An average home garden generates about $600 in produce with a minimum investment of $70. Growing your own food is not a hobby, but a financial strategy with consistent returns. Trick number 2. The rationing mindset applied to modern spending. The rationing system forced families to plan precisely and prioritize within fixed allocations. This mindset is identical to envelope budgeting. By assigning a visible and strict limit to a category, consumption decreases and satisfaction increases due to the deliberation of each purchase. Applying this to problem areas like eating out or entertainment drastically reduces unnecessary spending. Trick number 3, the use it up, wear it out, make it do or do without philosophy. The slogan, use it up, wear it out, make it do or do without, was a total action philosophy. It meant consuming products completely, repairing possessions, adapting existing items to new needs, and accepting that many wants were not real needs. This approach reduced civilian consumption by 30% without causing hardship, fostering a domestic innovation that today would reveal how much of our spending is purely habitual. Trick number 4. The meatless meal rotation. Meat shortages spurred economical recipes based on grains, legumes, and eggs, even improving overall nutrition. Since meat represents up to 30% of current food budgets, substituting it 2 or 3 times a week reduces protein spending by 20 to 30% without losing quality. A pound of lentils offers similar nutrition to meat for a fraction of the cost. Trick number 5. The Fat and Grease Collection Drive. The Fat Collection program taught people to see kitchen waste as a resource. Saving bacon grease or roasting drippings provides a free cooking medium that replaces purchased oil and butter. A modern family can save hundreds of grams of usable fat monthly, eliminating the need to purchase expensive vegetable oils. Trick number 6. The war bond saving habit. The United States government sold approximately $185 billion worth of war bonds to American civilians between 1941 and 1945, according to the U.S. Department of the Treasury's historical records. These bonds, sold in denominations as small as $18.75 for a bond that would mature to $25 in 10 years, were marketed not merely as patriotic investments, but as a systematic saving mechanism that would help American families emerge from the war in a stronger financial position than they had entered it. The war bond program was built on a behavioral insight that modern behavioral economists have confirmed and quantified. Automatic, pre-committed savings that are removed from spendable income before the household budget is calculated are far more likely to result in actual accumulated savings than savings that require an active decision to set aside from already available funds. Through payroll deduction programs promoted by employers and the Treasury Department, millions of American workers had bond purchases deducted automatically from their paychecks before they ever received their wages. According to Treasury Department records, at the peak of the program, approximately 85 million Americans, representing a significant majority of the adult population, owned war bonds. The post-war generation that cashed those bonds in the late 1940s and 1950s used the accumulated savings to fund home purchases, small business starts, and college educations that formed the foundation of the broad-based American middle-class prosperity of the post-war era. The modern equivalent? Automatic payroll contribution to a 401k or direct deposit to a savings account before the remainder reaches a checking account, applies the identical behavioral principle with the identical result. Trick number 7. The repair and reuse culture. Wartime material shortages transformed repair from a convenience into a necessity, and in doing so built a repair culture in American households that lasted for a generation after the war ended. Rubber rationing made tire repair and retreading essential. Shoe rationing made cobbler visits routine. Metal scarcity made appliance repair the default response to any malfunction. The War Production Board restricted the production of new civilian goods across dozens of categories, forcing Americans to maintain and repair what they already owned because replacements were literally unavailable at any price. According to historians of the American home front, including Elizabeth Cohen at Harvard University, whose research on wartime consumer culture is among the most comprehensive in the field, the repair culture of the war years produced a generation of Americans who retained strong repair instincts and skills long after goods became freely available again. And this repair orientation was a meaningful contributor to the household savings rates and wealth accumulation patterns of the post-war generation. The contrast with modern America is stark. According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics Consumer Expenditure Survey, American households spend approximately $700 per year on appliance and electronics replacements. Research by the repair advocacy organization iFixit estimates that the majority of devices replaced by American consumers each year could have been repaired at a cost of 10 to 30% of the replacement cost. The wartime lesson is precise and quantifiable. Repair before you replace, and the financial difference over a lifetime of household management is significant. Leave a like, subscribe, and share. Trick number 8, the Community Resource Sharing Network. Wartime America saw the emergence of formalized community resource sharing networks organized by neighborhood associations, civic groups, and local government that reduced per-household expenditure on tools, equipment, and services by making shared resources available to multiple households at reduced individual cost. Tool lending libraries, organized carpools for commuters and shoppers, community canning kitchens where households could use industrial canning equipment too expensive for individual purchase, and group buying arrangements for items purchased in quantities beyond what a single household could use were all documented features of the wartime American community landscape according to historical records from the Office of Civilian Defense. These sharing networks were built on the straightforward economic logic that many household tools, appliances, and pieces of equipment are used infrequently enough that the full cost of individual ownership is difficult to justify relative to the value derived. A lawnmower used twice a month, a pressure canner used during a 3-week period in late summer, a tile saw used for a single renovation project, or a truck needed for occasional large loads are all items where shared ownership or access produces equivalent utility at a fraction of the individual ownership cost. The modern sharing economy, including tool libraries operated by public library systems in dozens of American cities, neighbor-to-neighbor sharing apps, and cooperative purchasing arrangements, represents the direct descendant of the wartime community sharing networks. American families who actively participate in these networks consistently report lower household expenditure on tools, equipment, and services without reporting lower satisfaction with their access to those tools and services. Trick number 9, the scratch cooking discipline. Wartime food rationing and the scarcity of processed and canned foods drove American households back to scratch cooking with an intensity that had been declining since the early 20th century as commercial food processing expanded. The results were measurably positive for both household budgets and nutritional outcomes. Cooking from basic ingredients, flour, dried beans, fresh and homegrown vegetables, whole grains, eggs, and dairy, costs a fraction of the equivalent nutritional content purchased as processed, packaged, or prepared food. According to research by food economist Adam Drewnowski at the University of Washington, whose work on diet cost and nutritional quality is among the most cited in the field, the cost per calorie and per unit of nutrition is consistently and dramatically lower for foods prepared from basic ingredients than for their processed equivalents. The wartime household that baked its own bread, made its own soups from scratch, cooked dried beans from their raw state, and prepared meals from basic ingredients was eating more nutritiously and spending less money than the equivalent modern household that relies on processed convenience foods, boxed meal kits, and restaurant delivery services. According to Bureau of Labor Statistics data, American households spend approximately $3,000 per year on food away from home and heavily processed convenience foods. Research by food analysts at the USDA Economic Research Service consistently shows that scratch cooking from whole ingredients costs between 50 and 70% less per meal than purchasing equivalent prepared foods. The wartime scratch cooking discipline, applied to even half of a modern family's meals, produces annual savings measured in the hundreds to thousands of dollars. Trick number 10, the waste nothing, want nothing household audit. The final and perhaps most encompassing frugal trick of wartime America was the systematic household audit promoted by the Office of Civilian Defense and various wartime information campaigns, in which families were encouraged to conduct a thorough examination of every aspect of their household economy to identify and eliminate waste in all its forms. These audits covered food waste, energy waste, material waste, and spending waste, and they were conducted not as a one-time exercise but as an ongoing practice of household management. Families were provided with worksheets and checklists from government agencies that guided them through a comprehensive examination of where money and resources were going, where consumption was higher than necessary, and where substitutions or eliminations could reduce expenditure without reducing essential quality of life. According to the National Archives records of the Office of Civilian Defense, households that participated in organized wartime thrift campaigns and conducted systematic household audits reduced their monthly expenditure by an average of 15 to 20% without reporting meaningful reductions in quality of life or household satisfaction. The modern household audit applies the same principle, a systematic category-by-category examination of every line of household expenditure with the explicit question of whether each expenditure is genuinely necessary, optimally priced, and delivering value proportional to its cost. Research by financial planning professionals consistently shows that households who conduct this kind of systematic audit identify an average of $200 to $400 per month in expenditure that can be reduced or eliminated without meaningful impact on household quality of life. The wartime Americans who conducted these audits as a matter of patriotic duty discovered what modern families who conduct them as a matter of financial survival also discover: a surprising amount of what we spend is not what we need, but what we have simply gotten used to spending. And the difference between the two is where financial recovery begins. The frugal tricks that wartime America practiced were not primitive or backward. They were the product of a society that had decided, collectively and deliberately, that the current situation required a different relationship with money, consumption, and waste than the one that had prevailed before the crisis. The American families of the 1940s who grew victory gardens, saved their cooking fat, cooked from scratch, repaired their possessions, shared resources with neighbors, and bought war bonds with automatic payroll deductions were not suffering. They were building. They were building the financial foundation that would produce the greatest expansion of middle-class prosperity in American history in the decades that followed the war. The personal savings rate of American households today, hovering between 3 and 5% according to Bureau of Economic Analysis data, is less than a quarter of the wartime peak. Consumer debt is at record levels. Food waste runs at 30 to 40% of all food purchased. Repair has been almost entirely replaced by replacement. The wartime frugal tricks are not nostalgia. They are a tested, proven, historically validated set of practices that produced extraordinary financial outcomes for the families that applied them. The situation that modern families face with rising costs, stagnant wages, inadequate savings, and economic uncertainty is different in its details from the wartime situation, but identical in its essential demand. The situation requires a different relationship with money than the one you have been practicing. The wartime Americans changed their relationship with money when the situation demanded it. Modern families can do exactly the same thing. The tricks are right here. The choice is yours. Leave a like, subscribe, and share. See you next time.